Victory for MSU as the Spartans absolutely roll Prairie View A&M. But man, if you are an MSU student between 250 and 300 pounds, please report to the Tom Izzo football building immediately. We need you to play right guard. Okay, let's.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube, whether you're watching the recording or if you're joining the live show right now. Go ahead and give us your biggest takeaway right now in the comments, or hey, if you ever want to reach out, lockedonspartans@gmail.com is the place to find us. All right, let's get into the show, and this will teach those Panthers down at Prairie View A&M to never come back to East Lansing and expect to win. That's, I don't know, guys. Like, they did what they were supposed to do against a pretty brutal FCS team, if I could just be blunt about it. 40-0, a game that really never had any drama, but that doesn't mean that there isn't any big storylines, or especially one big storyline from the game. And boy, howdy, you go into a game against Prairie View and you're thinking, well, not a lot you can take out of this one. Not a lot of good can happen. The only real headliner that could happen is if a really bad injury happens. And what's that? Is that the medical card? Is that Gavin Broscious, our backup right guard? Well, actually, starting right guard, because our actual starter went down a few weeks ago. Yeah, he's getting wheeled off the field. So we're going to start there because, yes, Michigan State, they won by 40 points. They had some good performances. The young guys got to play. Tommy Touchdown got in the mix here. But, yeah, I hate to beat this horse into the ground, but we got to start on the offensive line, like we did with a lot of shows this offseason, because one of the concerns going into this year was, well, lack of offensive line depth. And this is like the sickest form of I told you so, but this is kind of why we were a little panicked, because let's just talk about it. Let's talk about the kid first. Let's be humans about this. I'm sorry to talk football before we talk about the actual, person behind the injury. Gavin Broscious, who tweeted out early on Sunday, "Love all y'all, I will be back." Obviously, it sucks. Like, every single football injury sucks, no matter if it's just one game, whether it's a full year. But man, you can sprinkle a little bit extra suckage onto this one, because Gavin Broscious did the same thing last year, guys. Like, he missed the whole year because his leg was blown to smithereens. And, well, what happens here? Same exact thing. And he's leaving the cart, draped in a towel. And yeah, so just before we start talking about the football aspect of it, just how about like the story of the person under the helmet right there? I feel horrible for Gavin Broscious, feel terrible for all injured Spartans, of course. And unfortunately, there's no shortage of that already 3 weeks into the season. But yeah, just for what he had to battle back from last year, he finally gets his moment, albeit in another unfortunate circumstances. Christian Phillips, the guy starting before him, went out with a season-ending injury, but yeah, just a very short-lived season yet again for Gavin Broscious. So let's talk about the football aspect of it. Uncomfortable thing to do, but we got to talk about it, right? Dallas Fincher took over at right guard. If you listen to the show in the offseason when we talked about offensive line depth, we always threw Dallas Fincher's name out there because he was the only projected backup with any college experience. So you at least have experience right there at the right guard position. But, oh, man, after that, guys, experience, of course, falls off a cliff, and we're starting to run out of scholarship players for the interior offensive line. Guys like Cooper Terpstra, he actually got 22 snaps at center against Prairie View A&M. Jacob Merritt, another former walk-on, he got 12 snaps at left guard. So, yes, right guard is a position we're talking about here, but interior linemen can, bounce between left guard, center, and right guard. So that is where we're at with Gavin Broscious and that injury. And, I mean, of course we talked about it this offseason that offensive line depth could be an issue, but, like, my God, I never thought that we'd be talking about how much of an issue it is and, like, how dire things are before your week 3 game even wraps up. So I don't know what Voodoo Witch, Michigan State has upset in the last few years, but man, oh man, they have gotten no breaks in the injury department. He joins, unfortunately, Dylan Tatum, Chance Rucker, Christian Phillips, Alante Brown, Khalil Majid, for guys that are going to be missing most of the season, if not the entire season. So that's 6 Spartans already in 3 games that pretty much have kissed their season goodbye. I know Alante Brown, he might come back in November, same with Khalil Majid, but Jesus. Oh boy. Yeah, again, I will try to pick up the spirit here again. It was a victory podcast, so you got to remember that. But so before I get to my takeaways, because look, I'm just a podcaster, what do I know? Let's talk about the takeaways of one Jonathan Smith. He spoke at the podium, of course, after the game, and there were 3 things that he pointed out that I just wanted to hit on really quick. Penalties, guys. Again, I said I'd pick up the spirit here after, a 40-point victory, but this is getting alarming. Okay, this is a thing, as the kids call it. They have the 7th most penalties per game in the nation. Once again, they had double-digit penalties for the 3rd time this year. So 3 games, 3 moments where you have at least 10 penalties, and Jonathan Smith acknowledged it and said this: it will catch up to them at some point if they keep on doing it. Now, he only blamed himself. He said, of course, that ladders all the way up to coaching. So that's been a pretty big disappointment here so far early on in the season. I found it interesting that they're actually not last place in the Big Ten for penalties per game. It's also Indiana and Washington, 2 programs breaking in new head coaches. I don't know if that's coincidence or correlation. I'm not going to claim to know, but I did think that is interesting that the Big Ten team struggling with penalties are guys cracking in new head coaches. But man, I really thought that would be an easier page to flip. But here we are. That's okay. It's going to take some time here anyway. Okay, so he also mentioned the young guys too. Rakeem Johnson, hey, offensive lineman, true freshman out of Idaho. Of course, the Idaho to MSU pipeline is rolling well. He had 24 snaps at right tackle. He also mentioned Brady Pretzloff is actually a guy that we mentioned in the pregame show because we got the question, hey, what young guys are you looking forward to seeing the most? He mentioned Brady by name, despite the fact he only had 8 snaps and 1 tackle. But hey, he caught Jonathan Smith's eye, so thought it was good to mention him right there. Also, he was asked about K'Ron Lynch-Adams versus Nate Carter, the split in carries. Like, hey, K'Ron Lynch-Adams, I believe he got 15 carries in this game, and then Nate Carter, he got 8. Yeah, 15-8. Is that turning of the tide? Was that just a matchup-dependent thing? The way he answered it was, you know what, don't look too much into it. Yes, we're going to look by the end of the year to have both of these guys kind of have equal splits. So 50-50 at the end of the season. But he also pointed to, it was just the play calls that they had there and throwing the guys on the field for specialized plays. Just, to round up the rushing yards on the season, K'Ron Lynch-Adams now averaging 6.2 yards per carry. Nathan Carter, 5.2 yards per carry. So those are Jonathan Smith's takeaways. We're going to get to my takeaways and, of course, your takeaways here at the other side of this. But first, guys, need to talk your ears off about 5-hour energy. Yeah, I need some 5-hour energy. I'm going to shoot you all straight here. This is why this episode is coming out so late. We were camping up north. It was great, but oh boy, those late nights can turn into sluggish mornings, especially when your boy has got to be the head coach of a T-ball team. You need to be alert for that one, but luckily, 5-hour energy came to the rescue, as they always do in many mornings or even afternoons. If you got a long to-do list and you need that push to the finish line, well, look to 5-hour energy. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's a perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-hour energy website has flavors galore, like watermelon. They have grape, they have berry, and there's a flavor for everyone, so try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. So stock up for the football season over at 5-hour energy. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, back into the big takeaways of this game. That's right, Spartans 40, those Prairie View A&M Panthers 0. Ha ha! whatever. Hey, you know what? A win's a win. Not going to complain about 3-0. We've come a long way in the last year. I should take this victory a little more seriously here. So my takeaways, we're going to start with a sunny one here. The man who's already a legend in Michigan State lore, right? Back as a true freshman in 2021 when Mr. Charles Brantley intercepted Caden McNamara in that very storied game against Michigan. Like, oh, God, he's, cemented as a legend right at the top. Since then, up and down career, a lot of injuries along the way. And you know what? Projected backup going into this season by me, by a few other media folks, but don't just take, our words for it. We're just idiots with microphones and keyboards. Like, guys, the coaching staff also thought that this guy was going to be a backup. There is a reason they went out and got guys like Ed Woods, Legend Cavazos in the transfer portal, because they weren't necessarily sold, they thought, going into this upcoming season. And Stephen Brooks mentioned this last week when we talked about Charles Brantley. It's like this coaching staff has tried to recruit over him and tried to replace him, for whether it be, okay, he's injury prone and he needs someone more reliable, or his play's been up and down over his career. But my goodness gracious, screw all that the last few years. This young man is balling out so far in 3 games. If you are a Pro Football Focus person, you take their word for a lot of things. Right now, his grade is 92.1, which is outstanding, and it's also the top grade on the season. I'm sorry, 92.1 was just for this game, 87.4 is for the season. Regardless, highest of all the Spartans so far this season. Let's talk about the moment, the pick 6. Look, maybe you come here for some hard-hitting analysis. I don't got anything on that other than that was awesome. 100-some yards going the other way into the end zone just moments after his pick 6 was taken off the board because of a ridiculous penalty. And I'm not saying it was a bad flag. I'm saying the rule's a little going overboard with quarterback protection there. Anytime you ding the quarterback's helmet, it's going to be taken back. I understand it, but man, what a bummer for Charles Brantley to have that taken away. Only to do something like 5 times cooler. Like, that was awesome. But hey, just even outside of that play, guys, just like we've been saying, like, this is a guy that, yeah, even as, a true freshman, he had that great moment. It's kind of like gone to the wayside here, or so many of us thought. So hand up for being very incorrect on that one. So far this season, 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. And guys, when he is being thrown to, he is only allowing a 27 completion percentage. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. So Charles Brantley, like, that's another main takeaway from this game. You look at the micro moment, his pick 6, but man, just so far in the 3-game season, that is so far the story on the defensive side of the ball, the resurgence of Charles Brantley. So 1 time for the Venice, Florida native. Now that's enough for the rosiness for this one. We will get back up to the brighter side of things, but before this game, in our chat with Brian Lewerke, I said, look, we got to see this team run against the tackles with efficiency against Prairie View A&M. This is a team that has gotten ran over in their 2 games against lesser competition. So, look, Michigan State hasn't looked great between the tackles against Florida Atlantic, against Maryland. But you know what? It's going to happen here, right? I think it left a little to be desired. They had 3.7 yards per carry on runs between the tackles, which, like, fine. But not against Prairie View A&M. Like, I would really like that number to be above 5. And also, I didn't count this yet, but it certainly seemed like a lot of hits behind the line of scrimmage, which was an issue coming out of that Florida Atlantic game. I don't know if anyone listened to that post-game show or any of those episodes. But after that game, Nathan Carter had 19 carries. He was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage 11 of those carries. It doesn't seem like there's been massive steps forward in the interior run game, but so this is just it for the rest of the season. I don't think it's going to get any better. We didn't really see it against Prairie View A&M. Obviously, it didn't matter in the win. It's just far beyond that. It's just, okay, can we actually see it against a far inferior team? And not really. They didn't fight on outside runs. Like, it wasn't a total disaster in the run game. They still, made some hay, but man, it's just between the tackles. And the reason I'm just so, just uptight about that is that helps set up play action, right, guys? Like, that helps build drives. That lets you know that, okay, on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, you do have a reliable part of your offense that you could just automatically go to. And right now, not even really against Prairie View did they have that. So that's the one concerning takeaway that I have right there. Let's get back to the sunny side of things. Isaiah Johnson, what a nice little touchdown for him there. Fought his way into the end zone. 3rd downs were just great for Michigan State. And Jonathan Smith acknowledged this in his press conference too. They were on fire in the first half. And he also said this as well. It wasn't like there were a lot of 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 1s. Like there were some 3rd and longs, but man, you know what? As hard as we're going to be on the run game, the interior, the lack of push is what we'll call it in layman's terms. The pass coverage, or the pass blocking, I should say, was extraordinary. And that is what it should have been against Prairie View A&M. But man, to only allow 3 quarterback hurries, not too shabby. Aiden had all day to sit back there on those 3rd downs. So that was really nice to see too. They also allowed 0.8 rushing yards by Prairie View A&M, which again, I know that's an insane stat, but that's kind of like what we expected them to do in this game. And look, let's just paint the picture on Prairie View A&M just really quick, just before we move any further here. And this isn't to take pot shots at Prairie View A&M or to dance on their grave. I hope they have a great season. Who cares? The reason I'm about to bring up all this stuff is just so we're on the same page. We all have context and we all understand what we all watched together on Saturday. It is truly one of, this sounds so mean saying, I'm sure they're all a bunch of nice kids. That's truly one of the worst FCS teams that you can find. Okay, the FanDuel over-under for their points scored in that game was 4.5. They weren't even expected to score a touchdown. S&P Plus had that predicted as a 40-0 victory. Geez, what do they know? My goodness gracious. Nice work by Bill Connolly over there. But on Thursday night, Northwestern State, they play Southern Alabama. Okay? 0-2 versus 0-2. Southern Alabama wins that game 87-10. Now, why am I bringing that game up? Well, before they took on Michigan State, Prairie View A&M played that team that just scored 10 points and gave up 87 points. And Prairie View was literally inches away from losing that game. Northwestern State came up inches away from the goal line on the final play to lose by 6. So transitive property is not a perfect science, but look, the reason I'm saying all this and I'm not doing full-on rah-rah about what we saw, that's why. Look, when this Louisiana game was canceled, we challenged Alan Haller to go find the worst team you could possibly find because there's enough hard games on this schedule. And boy, howdy, G. Willikers and Alan Haller accomplished that goal with Prairie View A&M. So again, not trying to grave dance, not trying to take pot shots. I just want everyone to have full context of what we saw there. This was not a North Dakota State, like a spicy FCS team. No, that was not that great of a one, as I've said. All right, so before we get to your takeaways that I reached out for on Twitter, we do have a mailbag question from Elijah that came. In case you need a mailbag question, sure, Elijah, of course we always do. Either Sheehan_sports or lockedonspartans@gmail.com. With freshman wide receiver Isaiah Johnson scoring his first touchdown and several other young guys getting reps, which young buck impressed you the most in our win? Also, 3 games and 3 wins in. Have your expectations shifted at all for this team? Really quick, the young buck, I got to say, Rakeem Johnson, we heard some good things about him in the offseason, even as a freshman lineman from Idaho, which when aren't you hearing about those guys over there? But yeah, 20-some reps. Held his own. I thought he looked okay. Again, the competition is what it is, but just as a true freshman against guys that are physically that big on that line, I thought he looked pretty good. Now, 3 games in and 3 wins in. Have my expectations changed at all? No, they have not, and that's kind of twofold. First of all, my prediction to start the year was 7-5, okay? We also did a bold predictions episode where I said, you know what, MSU is going to start the season 4-0. So that's why right now they haven't really changed. But I will pump the brakes here and not go any higher than 7-5, and also not be hey, 7-5 is a stone cold lock right now, because something deeply unfortunate has been happening outside of East Lansing. As good as our Spartans have looked, other teams have also started to look really good too. Like Illinois, for example. Rutgers looking pretty solid. Indiana looks like a juggernaut over there under Kurt Signetti so far in Bloomington. So those games are far from chip shots. Just because MSU has been looking really good in those 3 weeks doesn't mean that, no one else has been looking good. Really, the only team that's really trajected downward, downward to the point where I feel comfortable in calling that a victory, is Purdue. Of course, Michigan, they've trajected downwards, but man, I still think that's going to be a tough game. We got plenty of weeks to discuss that one. All right, we're going to get into your takeaways here in a hot second, but first, need to talk your ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, this upcoming Saturday, Golden Eagles versus Spartans. Our Spartans are catching 7.5 That's right, touchdown and 0.5 underdogs. If you are feeling good about our Spartans, go ahead, mosey on over to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. They got it hooked up all football season long with the spreads, the props, the futures, but also, hey, something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Again, guys, September 22nd, that is coming in hot. That's this Sunday. So if you want to catch this out, hey, $5, that's going to get you NFL Sunday Ticket. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook today. Again, it's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So I reached out to you beautiful people over on Twitter. I said, hey, you know what? Sound off with your biggest takeaways of this game. You heard my takeaways. You heard Jonathan Smith's takeaways. Well, you guys, hey, you get a voice too. Let's go. J to the C writes in, I don't know, which is a great way to start a takeaway thing. Like, I don't know what my takeaway is, but I'm taking State over Boston College next weekend. If you skipped over the ad read, you missed this. Michigan State 7.5-point underdogs. Okay, S&P Plus has you at 6-point underdogs. I'm going to have to give my prediction later on this week. I know I just said that we predicted 4-0, but I still am going to lean wind right now. But if I have any inkling that things can, switch the other way, I'll let you guys know. This is a fluid situation we have going. What I am most fascinated in this upcoming weekend is Michigan State's run defense against Boston College's run offense. Okay, this is going to be a really good test for Michigan State, and not like a good test in the sense like, oh, Boston College is averaging 7.7 yards per carry. Like, no, they are like right in the middle in the nation. They are average. But Michigan State hasn't even faced like an average run offense yet. Okay, first game against FAU, 4 new offensive linemen for the Owls. Then they play Maryland, 5 new starting offensive linemen for the Terrapins. And then I don't know Prairie View A&M's situation at offensive line. I just know that's Prairie View A&M. Like, they haven't faced most challenging offensive line and running back tandem yet. So this is at least a competent one, a physical one. So in Boston College's 2 games against Power 4 opponents, they've rushed for 5.1 yards against Florida State. Of course, in that Labor Day weekend that a lot of us watched, where we started to get a little worried about the Golden Eagles. But I think that game, as Florida State is 0-3, that was more about Florida State sounding the alarm bells and saying to ourselves, no one please take us seriously. Then what happened on Saturday with Boston College, I think they rushed for less than 2 yards. Yeah, 1.9 yards per carry against Mizzou. So between Mizzou and Florida State, where does Michigan State stack up? We talked last week that, hey, you know what? The rush defense, this can be a strength of the team. How much of a strength are we talking? Like top 20 nationally? Top 10 nationally, just top 50 nationally? I'm excited to see a first legitimate challenge here from this front 7. Logan writes in, no turnovers, thank God, and finally beat a team badly, which we haven't done for many years now. Now, last year it was 45-14 against Richmond. However, Logan, no one here can fault you if you've just scrubbed last year out of your memory completely. Not a single Spartan can say, how could you forget? No, please, we're all trying to forget last season, so good on you. Also, you know what? I got to say, I think we all needed this as one big Spartan family, just a cathartic beatdown against whoever the opponent was, just based on the ticket prices alone before this game. When this game got scheduled, I thought, okay, you know what? You can get into Spartan Stadium for probably a firm handshake and a smile. These tickets are going to be 75 cents at kickoff, but I checked before kickoff and cheapest was like $40. So it's, oh my God, people just need to see a win here in person. I love it. The energy is back around this program. Took no time for Jonathan Smith to build all of that up. Brandon in the portal writes in, to be honest, red zone offense still isn't as efficient as I would like. They do rank outside the top 100 right now. The season is still young, but they have 12 red zone attempts. 8 scores, 5 of them touchdowns, of course, the other 3 being field goals. Now, having 3 turnovers in the red zone in your first game of the season, that's going to skew the numbers. That's not going to look too good. But, yeah, hopefully that gets better because I had a hard time believing it'll get worse as far as percentages go. Joshua writes in, we're sneaky good, but we need to get some freshmen involved, I think. The linemen and defensive backs especially. Really thought we would have seen a whole set of freshman, sophomore DBs yesterday to start rotating them. Fantastic point, Joshua. You have guys like Jeremiah Hughes, that's a redshirt freshman from LSU. You have Justin Denson, true freshman, Andrew Brinson, Ade Wiley. All four of those guys, young guys, none of them got more than 8 snaps in the game against Prairie View A&M. So I thought that was interesting. The game seemed pretty put away, but even for a unit that, seems pretty stocked with experience to pass the baton off in the fourth quarter to these guys, So that was interesting. So I'm glad Josh pointed that out. Alex said, biggest takeaway, we've gone from very little depth on the offensive line to no depth on the O-line. Probably going to see some young guys push into action before they are physically ready. Well, yeah, that's unfortunately what's going to happen here. And like we said, running the ball in between the tackles has already been an issue, even with the starting unit in week 1. Now we're going back to true freshmen and walk-ons. Should anyone else get hurt there? And that's not to say walk-ons are an automatic dud at offensive line. It of course works sometimes. Look at Jack Conklin. That worked out okay, but man, I'd much rather have my healthy starters than the guys doing this for free. I say that as undisrespectfully as I possibly can, but yeah, we all know it's dire times in the offensive line right now. Alex writes in, touchdown Tommy is better than any quarterback on a specific team's roster. I think he's talking about that school down the road who has a quarterback situation that is just mind-boggling, especially in this day and age in the transfer portal, where Michigan State got Aiden Childs, of course, and also Tommy Schuster, who looked very competent in his time. I loved how agile he was in the pocket, very aware of all of his surroundings. That's what you get out of a guy with 4 years starting experience over at your FCS school. Of course, I'll say it for the 20th time. Let's pump the brakes. It was Prairie View A&M. That might look a little differently should he play Oregon or Ohio State. But you saw a lot of things that you only get with an experienced quarterback, and he just looked precise. He's known for his accuracy. He set all sorts of records at South Dakota for his accuracy. Or no, I'm sorry, it's North Dakota. Oh, shoot, I'm going to upset some fans over there. North Dakota for his accuracy. But yeah, I thought he looked good. But yeah, just to comment on the team down the road really quick, how is that even possible to have a quarterback situation like that coming off a national championship and in the era of NIL? And also just being who you are. You could hate Michigan as much as I do, but there's one irrefutable fact. That's a massive brand name. How do you not have quarterbacks just crawling to you to start there? So yeah, if Michigan State can get a really competent quarterback to play backup for them, how on earth weren't you able to get an actual starting quarterback out of the transfer portal? And here's one argument that I keep hearing that is just nonsense. It's, by the time Harbaugh and J.J. McCarthy left, there was no one in the portal. We couldn't do anything. I got some advice. Tamper. Just tamper. Call whatever quarterback you want in the country. Say, hello, it's the reigning national champions here. Come play quarterback for us. You're going to make a lot of money. Just tamper. You guys made this whole to-do about how everyone cheats like Connor Stallions does, even though that's not really true. Why stop at the thing that everyone actually does, which is tampering for other players? You can't do this whole thing we're big bad Michigan. We can do what we want. And then, oh no, we can't get a quarterback. They're all gone. Be somebody and just tamper like adults. It is a baffling quarterback situation over there. Anyway, back to Michigan State talk here. Jack with a great point. Jack's main takeaway is that we have some unholy voodoo on us when it comes to injuries. Look, I'm going to look into it this week to see if Spartan Stadium is built on some Native American burial ground, because this is countless years in a row that this has happened. And we've gotten some comments about conditioning, nutrition, and all that stuff. These programs need to be looked at with all the injuries, which I guess I don't have an argument against, but some of these injuries just seem just for a foregone conclusion. The injury to Broscious, I believe he got rolled up on. You can have the strongest bones in the world. You're not gonna come out of that healthy. So I don't know. It's just, yeah, fun. Football's fun. Great. All right. Anyway, you know what, guys, before we end this, we're going to talk a little bit about basketball here, just because I'm sorry to say we neglected it. And at the end of Grind Week, which is such a cool event, fourth Grind Week, I believe. And it's just awesome to have the former players come back, mingle with the new players, get conditioning in, get a lot of live games going so far. Xavier Tillman was back with his family. He got the photo on the NBA championships wall. Draymond was back. And also, love this, tweeted out from the MSU basketball account, a video of the players showing up. And the first one, Chris Allen. Yes, the Chris Allen that got dismissed from the program years ago. This is like, it is truly a family here at Michigan State. I know that is like the biggest cliche for all sports across the country. It's like, oh, we're a brotherhood, we're a family. Like, Michigan State lives it. Like, I'm sure that did not end on good terms there, but man, clearly the relationship has still kept in touch. Chris Allen gets there, daps up Izzo, just like old pals meeting again. Like, it's very cool to see the lineage of Michigan State legends just keep coming back generation after generation, I feel like, at this point. So the non-conference schedule was also announced not too long ago. We're going to go through the games really quick. Monmouth, Niagara, and then the Champions Classic against Kansas. And then the Maui Invitational will play Colorado. And then either UConn or Memphis. And then the third Maui game against some other Power 6 school. And then the Oakland University game back at Little Caesars Arena for all my Metro Detroit Spartans out there. And your last two non-conference games, FAU on December 21st, which, you know what, Dusty May kind of depleted that roster on his move to Michigan, so we'll see what kind of Owls team we get. And then Dwayne Stevens and the Western Michigan Broncos, they will be coming to town in December as well. So, just saw a few of these comments, and I thought this at first, that kind of seems like a weaker non-conference schedule for basketball. But not really when you think about it. I think it just looks like that because the Baylor, Arizona, Duke, and Butler games, like, they were just spread out. Like, it seemed like every week we had a game against a Power 6 opponent. But this year, like, most of that happens in the Maui Invitational. No shortage of great teams going on in that. Just like we said, like, the second game is either against Memphis or, God, UConn if you beat Colorado. So, yeah, again, it's going to be 4 against Power 6 teams, just like it was last year. So that's what we got as far as the schedule goes. And really quick, Jalen Harrelson, 5-star, 6'6", 210-pounder out of La Lu down in Indiana. Official visit at Michigan State this weekend. Now he also has offers and visits set up to, well, do you know what? He did have one set up to Kansas. He did have one set up to Mizzou, but he has since canceled those. He still will have his Purdue visit coming up, but he's also visited Indiana and Notre Dame. I got to say, this would be a very impressive get, should Tom Izzo get him. Just because, obviously, those are good programs you're going up against. But, of course, in this day and age of college basketball, it's not just, hey, who has the best program? NIL is also a sweet package, too. And, of course, like, Michigan State isn't prudes totally to spending an NIL. Like, Xavier Booker isn't here for free, necessarily. But, man, Indiana, they've got a bankroll that could rival some NBA teams. So if you can get his commitment over the Hoosiers, that just blow you away. So, all right, just a little nugget for recruiting to end the show there. Again, thanks a lot, guys, for those that are watching right now on the YouTube live channel. Thanks a lot for your patience for this episode. Again, camping over the weekend, I tried to give recording a go, but man, oh man, turns out when you are as far up in the thumb as you could possibly be, Wi-Fi and cell service, a little hard to come by. So, guys, thanks a lot for your just patience and just for listening and watching. Hope you all have a fantastic week. We got a bunch of guests lined up leading up to the Boston College game. I believe every show this week we have a guest on schedule, so that should be a good one. Not just me blabbing. We're going to get a lot of experts to pick their brains about Boston College, your Michigan State Spartans. Let's get ready for kickoff. Oh, Saturday, 8 p.m., baby. That's right, ACC Network, which is a total dud, but whatever. There we go. All right, guys, love you all. Go Green.